Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Women of Family, Home, and Social Sciences, FHSS. Today, joining us, we have Katelyn Cranney. Katelyn, how are you?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you so much for coming and talking with us a little bit about your journey. So Katelyn and I just met actually as a result of some really exciting things. And so Katelyn, I thought maybe we would first get started by just knowing who you are and what you're majoring in.
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Katelyn Cranney. I'm originally from Denver, Colorado. I'm a senior here at BYU studying economics and mathematics, and it has been a great time. With kind of those majors, I am applying to econ PhD programs this fall. So for starting in the fall of 2024. So I've done lots of fun things kind of in that to prepare for those applications and kind of my path to get to econ and to pursue a PhD. And yeah, Lindsay's been helpful.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. Well, Katelyn, I was wondering, I just found your journey to thinking about grad school really fascinating. And so I thought that's where we would spend the majority of our conversation today. So I was wondering what interested you in pursuing grad school. It's not as common, I don't think, especially for a lot of our econ students, but maybe you could just lead us through, like, what were the thought processes? Was this even something you thought about when you started as a freshman? So maybe let's start there.
Yeah, great question. I definitely did not come to BYU thinking I wanted to study economics at all, much less do an economics PhD. That definitely came later. I came to BYU and I wasn't an econ major or anything. I think I started in some other, maybe poli-sci or something like that. But I took Econ 110 and started taking some more econ classes and just loved it. I loved it the way that economists think about the world and think about ways that we can try to improve the world through causal inference and looking at using mathematics and data and econometrics. I thought it was just really interesting and really valuable, the skills I was learning. I wanted to get more involved with knowing what economics, like the practice of it, looked like. So I wanted to get some research jobs. So I ended up getting my first economics research job as a freshman. I worked with Dr. Price. He hires tons of people still. So I'm sure that door's open to lots of people. And I think I started telling people that I'm like, oh, maybe I could do grad school as a way to get some of those research jobs because professors like when you're interested in what they're interested in. But it wasn't until probably like a year or two later when I was more I'd done research for a while. I was working with a different professor in the economics department that I realized, like, I think this is actually not something that I'm just interested in, but something I want to pursue. And that mindset shift changed a lot of the decisions I made and the way I approached my classes and my research and how hard I was working. Not that I wasn't working hard before, but that the committing to that goal changed the mindset of how I approached BYU.
That's amazing. So it sounds to me like you had some really lucrative experiences that kind of helped you in this journey. It wasn't like this was what you knew you were going to do. So you came to BYU, you started taking classes, you were interested in a topic, and then you went and you approached professors to learn more and dive in a little bit more. So that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
So what were some personal things maybe that you had to grapple with in deciding to pursue this road? Because a PhD, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure that anybody who's in a PhD program will tell you how hard it can be, also how rewarding it can be. So maybe, Katelyn, can you lead us through like some of the personal things that you had to grapple with in pursuing a PhD?
Yeah, I don't know if I would say I'm an expert, seeing as I have not done one, but from what I understand and kind of my own path to deciding that's what I do want to do, there's some definite things that I wouldn't recommend this path to everyone, especially not all econ majors at all, because it's very competitive to get into economics as a discipline. So you have to have really excellent scores, you have to have a really great resume, and you have to study a lot of mathematics, which is really difficult. That was something hard for me. I came to BYU thinking I would never have to take another math class again. I was very wrong. Here I am with a major in math, but long story short, math is really important for economics grad school. And that was really scary to me, the idea of taking things like abstract algebra or computational linear algebra or like ordinary differential equations. That just sounded really scary. But I've surprised myself by, like, as I work for something, and especially working for something for the purpose of, like, I have this goal and I know that to do that, I need to do this. My motivation to do the hard thing that was keeping me from doing that, it's a lot, it gets better. Like I would never, if you had asked me like my sophomore year of high school, if I liked math, I would have said I hated math. And now I think math is this beautiful tool to help us understand how the world works. So I think that you don't let your own personal barriers of what you think you can't do keep you from doing something that you want to do. Like I know that this life would be this career, I'd be interested in this, but don't let whatever I think the obstacles are to get there keep me from trying.
How did you overcome those personal biases, right? We talk a lot as women on imposter syndrome, and sometimes there might be some question marks as to, is this the right choice? I'm up against this barrier, maybe it's not right. Like, can you lead us through what has worked for you in determining to move forward? Like, I love the idea of having kind of the end in mind. But as you were going through those experiences, what were some questions that you asked? What were just some decisions that you had to make to kind of navigate into this idea, especially when it comes to math, right? Like, I don't think that you're alone in thinking that you would have never touched that again, but maybe, like going for more challenging opportunities.
Yeah, I definitely have thought a lot about what imposter syndrome looks like for me. And I think the way that I have better framed it for myself is less of imposter syndrome and more of risk aversion. I think women in general, and me especially, I only want to do things that I know I can succeed at. And that closes a lot of doors for me because you don't know if you can really do well in something if you never try, right? So I think there is an element of taking a risk that seems scary, that I might fail or I might not do very well or not get an A in the class. Because I'm risk averse and I want to do something that I feel like I'm comfortable in and safe in, and that would be like a path that I could understand and succeed. But as I acknowledge that fact that I am risk averse and I can make more conscious choices to not say no to myself and let other people say no to me, like or to not give me a job or whatever, I think that I am continually surprised by how many things I can do that I thought I would like, oh, that would be too risky. I'd never get that job. I would never have an opportunity. Like a good example of this is I had this amazing opportunity to work at Harvard Business School over the last summer. I had a cool fellowship doing research. It was amazing. It was super competitive. I applied on a whim, not thinking at all that I would get it. It was just more of like a practice thing in my head of like, oh, I can practice applying to grad school-esque type applications. I almost didn't do it. Like I remember the night, I'm like, I don't know if there's no way that I would get this. So why even finish the last hour of the working on essays or resume or whatever? But I ended up getting it, and it's changed the course of my career trajectory drastically. The people I've met, the research I've been able to do, it's just like, I can't even describe how grateful I am that I took the chance on myself to not say no to myself on something that I was sure was not going to happen, because I did. So I think to go for things you don't feel, even if you don't feel qualified for or seem too risky, you'll be surprised how well sometimes it can work out.
It's amazing to me, like I hear such confidence in your voice and in your approach. I'm curious if you can lead us through maybe the faith journey that you went through as you approached fear and risk aversion. Maybe it wasn't fear for you, but I just
there was definitely fear. There still is a lot of fear. I think about applying to grad schools and everyone saying no, and I'm like, well, then what do I do? Like there's real fear there of like, what if all the things I've been working for don't work out? Like, what if this grade in this class keeps me from getting into a good school? And there's a lot of that I deal with on a daily basis. I think something that helps me get through that is I've received like personal confirmation from like that what I'm doing is what God wants me to be doing right now, and that my career is a way that I can help a lot of people, and that it is something that I can understand God better through. I think economics and mathematics and the way that systems and processes, I think it's beautiful, and I think there's an element of divine design in the way that the world works and the way that we want it to work and it could work, that I think that is really valuable. And I see a lot of value to my time in pursuing this. And I think God helps compensate for the sacrifices I make in other elements of my life to work really hard on these goals, because I feel like He wants me to be here, and that I have something to contribute to this field and to my future career. So there's definitely a lot of fear and moments of imposter syndrome or not feeling confident. But when I go back to I know that this is what God wants me to do, and that He'll help me get to where I need to be, definitely helps at the end of the day.
Mhm. I hope this isn't too personal, and so don't feel like you have to share the moment itself, but did you feel like it was one clarifying moment where you knew that this is the path that God had in store for you? Or did you feel like it was culminating, or not a culminating moment, like line upon line? Like, how did you arrive to that clarity?
That's a great question. I think that was a little bit of culminating line upon line. I was always relatively ambitious, and since I was younger, although it definitely wasn't for econ when I was young, so I didn't know what econ was. But I always thought like, oh, I'll be a movie star, or I'll be like the world's best singer or something. The ambitions were always high. So I kind of had that approach to life of, I'm gonna do whatever I choose to do, I'm gonna kind of give it my all. But then getting to where I am now, I feel like part of my faith is helping other people. I think I'm very committed to following the example of Jesus Christ, in that He helps people who are historically underserved or who are on the margins. I really love that idea of the gospel of Jesus Christ, helping those who need extra help. And finding a discipline that allowed me to do that, I think confirmed, like, now I have a place where my ambition and my desire to serve Jesus Christ and like be a good member of a church can kind of be in the same place. And that was really helped. I also received like a blessing when I was trying to decide what classes to take. I was kind of at that point of, am I all in or not? I had to take a bunch of math classes if I was going to kind of start that field. I remember that being that week of deciding whether or not to add all those math classes was really scary. And I received a blessing of this is going to be hard, and it's not going to be something that you're going to like love. Like, it has not been easy or fun necessarily, but it's been very worth it, because I feel like it's where God wants me. So I think receiving blessings was really helpful. And I think going to the temple and receiving kind of personal confirmation that the sacrifices I was making or going to make are going to be worth it for something that I can do in the long run.
Thank you so much for letting me ask that super personal question. Thank you for being so vulnerable about it.
Yeah.
I have two more questions. I was curious how mentorship, I mean, you talked about working with Dr. Price and working with other faculty members has helped you learn more about what you want to do. So what advice do you have for other students who are seeking mentorship, who may not be as extroverted, maybe they're a little bit more shy, maybe they still don't have a clear direction, so they don't know how to approach faculty members? Can you maybe give us some advice that way?
Yeah, that's a great question. My main mentor here, her name is Dr. Stoddard. She's in econ department. I've been working for her for a long time. She's absolutely fabulous. And our relationship started when I was a freshman. I emailed her asking for a book list, because she taught economic development, which I was interested in, but I could take the class for another couple of years because I had all these prereqs. But I'm like, well, I'm interested in this kind of topic, and I want to know if it's something that I want to pursue. So I asked her just for book recommendations, and that kind of opened a door, so she knew who I was. So then she posted a job for a research assistant that I was vastly underqualified for. Like, I just had none of the skills she was looking for. But I'm like, oh, that would, why not? Like, kind of one of those things, don't say no to yourself, let someone else say no to you. And I applied, and by some amazing luck or magic or divine intervention, whatever you call it, I got the job. And it's been an amazing experience to work on this project and to work with her. But I think those two things of just trying to start conversations on things that that you can like just open doors with people, like asking for book lists or asking for research papers. Like, you can kind of frame it as, I think your research or the things that you teach are really interesting. What can I do to understand more or to learn more about that? And then kind of creating a relationship that when jobs open up or when you have ideas of research you want to do, that you can come to those people and they know who you are. They're willing to kind of take a chance on you.
I love that. I love that advice. Thank you. So as we kind of wrap up a little bit, you know, the demographic of individuals that we're trying to reach with this initiative. I'm curious, do you have anything else that you feel would empower our women students to pursue whatever they choose post-graduation, whether or not that's fulfilling grad school or stay-at-home opportunities or part-time or full-time opportunities?
That's a great question. I think just to go back, kind of what I was talking about before is I think there's a cultural expectation here at BYU and in our religious environment that women should have family and stay at home and be mothers. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but if that's not currently part of your life, I wouldn't let that determine the decisions you make for your future. I used to think of like, well, whatever career I have, I need to make sure I can still be a mom and still be able to be with my kids. And while that is important, I still do want to have a family. I don't want that to rule the things that I can do now because that's not currently something that I'm working on. I don't have any children. And I think there's a great book, Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, and she talks about this idea of never letting, like, don't take yourself out of the equation until you have to shoot for, like, be as ambitious as you can and for as long as you can. And then when those things arise that could be potential barriers, like you deal with that as it comes, but you don't inhibit yourself before it happens, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's this idea of pre-decision, right? Like I'm making a decision on something that may not be within my particular control right now. And one thing that we've talked about in other forums is this idea of and instead of or.
Yeah.
This idea that you can actually be a mom and pursue other opportunities at the same time if you want to. Not saying that choosing or electing to stay home, which by the way is probably the hardest job ever.
Absolutely.
Right? Is because that is also enough, right? Like everything is enough. And it's this idea of feeling an inspiration for you, your situation, and your family without letting this like predisposed narrative kind of decide that for you. It's like your ability to receive personal revelation, your ability to work within the circumstances that you're in to determine what that's going to look like for you and your family, including if you opt to stay home and raise a family. And that is also just as fulfilling. So I really appreciate you opening up the conversation of let's try to step away from making decisions now based on a future that is uncertain.
That hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Like make the decisions for now, right? So I appreciate that advice. We also talked, I think you and I, about dating advice. Right. And so let's go there. I mean, yeah, this is a forum talking about future and potential and the unknown, but you've experienced some things in your past that you said that you would like to share when it comes to, like, I don't know, your future, especially when it comes to dating. Did you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah. So it's been definitely hard as I try to navigate the world of looking for someone who can be an equal partner with me and help me in all my ambitions and all I want to do. I've had people say insensitive things or relationships end due to those kinds of issues. But I have hope that I'll find someone who can be that equal partner, although I haven't necessarily found one yet. And I also think there's a lot of pressure at BYU, especially that we need to find our people now. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that we have lots of time after undergrad that we can meet and find and date the right person, and to not marry someone that wouldn't be a great fit for you and your dreams wouldn't be as supportive of what you want to do because you feel like you have to get married before you leave BYU. So
I appreciate that. And this is a really hard topic to talk about in a forum where we don't know where people are going to be listening. And I think the big takeaway here is that while it may feel maybe devastating at the time where you find out from an individual that their goals and your goals don't align, that finding individuals who are supportive of your goals and who you are supportive of their goals is going to be a huge part of this puzzle for moving forward from a courting relationship into a marital relationship. And I think that for me, that is the big takeaway from what you're saying is while your experience has been your experience, and I don't want to diminish that, the takeaway is you will have opportunities to, through conversation of getting to know one another, know what that support is going to look like and help
Yeah.
you determine, because it's a lot more difficult when you're in a marital situation to then discuss things that are really important to you and then realize the support is not there. It's just harder to navigate. Not saying that marriage should end or anything like that. It's just harder to navigate. And so I appreciate the insight.
Yeah, it should be something that you talk about early and often. Like, I think this is something that's important to me. So it's something that they should know about. Like, if they want to date me, or even just be my friend or be part of my life, that's something that they should know and expect, and that my decisions will revolve around that.
Right.
So making that part of the conversation, I think helps a lot. It maybe closes things off sooner than you would think it would, but also just leaves more time for people who actually are invested in helping you become all you can be. So
yeah, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Like making sure that that's support too. And if you listen to some of our other interviews, you can see how women who are married have managed within that relationship to figure out, how does this look like if I'm pursuing my PhD and my spouse is pursuing med school or their PhD, like what does that look like? What are some things that we need to think about as we learn how to communicate with one another our goals?
Yeah.
And then also realizing that there's a fabric of community that also helps in self-transformation, and understanding your divine potential also helps with that as well. So not necessarily relying solely on a spouse to give you that experience, but more like, what is support going to look like? So I really appreciate that. Any other thoughts as we wrap up?
I don't think so. I think just kind of to wrap up of summarizing what I think is most important out of this conversation, I think define what you feel passionate about and what feels good for you and what God wants you to do, and then to not let anything stop you from doing that. For me, that has been pursuing a pretty ambitious, competitive career, but that might not be what it is for you. But once you receive that revelation that that's right, don't let other things, or your own fear or risk aversion or imposter syndrome or boys or dating keep you from doing the thing that you're supposed to do.
Awesome. Katelyn, thank you so much. I'm so excited to hear what's going to happen for your life. So keep me posted, keep us posted. And thank you so much for being so open, willing, and vulnerable during our conversation today.
Absolutely. Thank you.